For more than 3 decades, I carried a secret that lived in the shadows of my life. A secret I guarded with silence, fear, and longing. But silence always takes its toll, and today, at 57 years old, I can no longer keep it hidden. Truth must be told, my truth, our truth, the truth about Richard Gere and me. To the world, we were Hollywood's dream couple, the dazzling faces of Pretty Woman and later Runaway bride. But behind those red carpets, flashing bulbs, and scripted smiles, was a private story that neither of us ever dared to admit. A story of love and betrayal, of passion and heartbreak, of choices that haunted us long after the applause had faded. It all began in 1989 when I was just 22 years old, a nervous young actress desperate for a chance to prove herself. The role was for a movie called Pretty Woman, and my audition partner was none other than Richard Gere. He was 40 then, already a global star, elegant, handsome, untouchable. My palms sweated, my heart pounded, and as the director, Gary Marshall, stared at us waiting for magic, I realized that if I didn't find a spark, I would lose my chance. So I scribbled a note, slid it toward Richard, and on it were 3 words, "Please say yes." He read it, looked into my eyes, and after a long pause, smiled with a spark that lit up the entire room. "Okay, kid," he said softly. In that moment, I knew my life had just changed forever. When filming began in 1990, I was still a girl in every sense, inexperienced, unsure, hiding my nerves behind laughter. Richard, by contrast, was calm, collected, and seemed to belong under the weight of 1,000 spotlights. Yet when the cameras rolled, something else happened. Every kiss, every touch, every glance felt too real. My heart refused to separate the script from the truth. Each day I told myself, "Julia, it's just acting," but every night I lay awake, knowing it was more. By the time Pretty Woman premiered in March 1990, we had become not only co-stars but Hollywood's new obsession. The film soared past $400 million at the box office. Overnight, I was America's sweetheart, and Richard's star power blazed even brighter. Together, we were the fairy tale couple everyone envied. On red carpets, at premieres, and interviews, the world believed we were living the fantasy. But behind those glowing smiles, something far more dangerous was unfolding, a secret fire I couldn't put out. And so began the story no one was ever supposed to hear. But let me ask you this, do you believe that 2 people can truly fall in love while pretending for the cameras, or is it all just smoke and mirrors? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'm curious to know what you think. The affair began quietly, almost innocently. One night in May 1990, after a screening in New York, I returned to my hotel exhausted. A knock on the door startled me. It was Richard. No tuxedo, no entourage, just a man with gentle eyes telling me I had done a wonderful job. When he wrapped his arms around me, I crumbled. That night, there were no cameras, no lines to rehearse. What happened between us was real, reckless, tender, and unforgettable. From that moment, secret meetings became our rhythm. Hotels in Beverly Hills, late-night calls across coasts, quiet corners of cafes where no one would recognize us. By day, we dazzled the press as co-stars. By night, we loved in the shadows like fugitives running from the truth. It was intoxicating and terrifying all at once. The storm reached its peak in 1991, just before what the press called the wedding of the year. I was engaged to Kiefer Sutherland, the church booked, the dress waiting. But 3 days before I ran, the headlines branded me a coward, a runaway bride. I was humiliated, hunted by paparazzi, mocked by the press. But in that chaos, Richard was my refuge. I still remember escaping to a quiet seaside cottage where, through tears, I told him, I really did run away. He held my hand and whispered words that seared into me forever. You didn't run away. You ran toward the truth. That night, I believed him. But love in the dark never comes without consequences. In December 1991, Richard shocked the world by marrying supermodel Cindy Crawford. Their glamorous images plastered every magazine cover. To the world, they were the golden couple. To me, it was betrayal wrapped in silence. I smiled through tears in public, but behind closed doors, I collapsed. When I confronted him, he told me it was all for show. But silence was his constant companion, and that silence cut deeper than any scandal. In desperation, I too married country singer Lyle Lovett after only weeks of knowing him. Hollywood gasped, but I knew the truth. It wasn't love, it was escape. Yet even in marriage, my heart remained chained to Richard. I remember sitting in my wedding dress after the guests had left, longing only to call him. By 1993, our affair became impossible to hide. A blurry photo in the National Enquirer, a man and a woman sneaking into a hotel. Captions screamed what the world already suspected. That woman could only be Julia Roberts. The scandal exploded. Cindy was furious. Lyle confronted me. Hollywood whispered my name with contempt. I had become the villain, the woman who destroyed marriages, the symbol of betrayal. Richard stayed silent as always, and I crumbled beneath the weight of shame. On Christmas night of that same year, I sat alone in my car and called him. Through tears, I could barely speak. His voice, soft but firm, whispered, "You're the only one who makes me feel alive." It was a confession and a curse. For by then I had lost everything, my innocence, my reputation, my peace of mind. By 1994, my marriage was in ruins, and Richard's with Cindy hung by a thread. We parted ways publicly, but privately the fire still burned. Even after all the destruction, neither of us could truly walk away. Years passed, and I buried myself in new roles, new projects, trying to bury the past with them. But fate has a way of circling back. In 1998, Gary Marshall reunited us once again, this time for Runaway Bride. Standing next to Richard on set, a decade older, supposedly wiser, I felt that same spark I had felt at 22. Every scene, every glance reignited what we thought had died. We argued on set about characters, about scripts, about who our roles should be. But every argument only fueled the fire. Behind the professional facade, the truth never changed. I still loved him, and he still loved me. I remember filming the wedding scene at the end of Runaway Bride. I wore the dress, he stood waiting, and as the cameras rolled, our lips met. The world saw Maggie and Ike finally get their happy ending. But in that moment, I wasn't acting. I was Julia, standing before the man who had both saved me and broken me, knowing that in real life our ending would never look like the one captured on screen. And that is the tragedy that has lived with me for 30 years. Richard Gere was not just my co-star. He was the man I loved in secret, the man I ran toward when the world mocked me, the man whose silence became both my comfort and my wound. Today, I tell this story not for scandal, not for gossip, but because silence has held me hostage long enough. Ours was a love too dangerous to be lived in daylight, a love that burned too brightly to survive, a love that left scars even as it gave me memories I will never forget. Richard Gere was my beginning, my storm, and my shadow. And no matter how much time passes, the truth remains. Behind every smile on those red carpets, behind every kiss on screen, there was something real, a love that history never allowed to be told. Until now.